President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, French President Emmanuel Macron and Jordanian King Abdullah II conducted a phone call with the U.S. President Donald Trump to discuss the need to reach a ceasefire in Gaza and release the hostages. The phone call came after Egypt hosted a tripartite summit on Gaza. Presidential spokesman Mohammed said that the three leaders discussed with Trump means of guaranteeing a ceasefire, releasing captives, and the resumption of aid access into Gaza. The spokesman added that the phone call tackled also the importance of achieving peace in Ukraine in order to maintain the international security and stability. On the sidelines of the three-way summit, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi met with Jordan's King Abdullah II. Presidential spokesman Mohammed said that during the meeting, the two Arab leaders stressed the importance of Egypt-Jordan strong bilateral relations. They also highlighted the importance of joint coordination regarding the situation in Gaza and the West Bank. Cairo hosted a tripartite Egyptian-Jordanian-French summit with the participation of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, Jordan's King Abdullah II, and the French President Emmanuel Macron. The summit focused on the regional developments, notably the Israeli occupation military offensive in Gaza, as well as the Israeli occupation escalations in the West Bank, Lebanon and Syria.
Leaders of Egypt, France and Jordan held a trilateral summit in Cairo on the grave situation in Gaza in the context of the resumption of Israeli occupation military strikes on Gaza. They called for an immediate return to a ceasefire deal for the sake of Palestinians to be protected and sufficient amounts of humanitarian aid to be received. The three leaders also called for the implementation of the phased-in ceasefire agreement, guaranteeing the release of all hostages and detainees and ensuring security for all. They highlighted that the protection of civilians and humanitarian personnel, as well as full access for the delivery of aid, is an obligation under international law, thus it must be upheld. Leaders also expressed alarm at the increasingly deteriorating situation in the West Bank and the eastern city of Al-Quds and urged to stop all unilateral measures that undermine the visibility of the two-state solutions and increase tensions. They also called for the respect of the historical state of Al-Quds holy sites. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, along with French President and Jordanian guests, reiterated the rejection and all displacement of Palestinians from their land of any annexation of Palestinian territory. In this regard, they called for an international endorsement of the reconstruction plan for Gaza adopted by the Arab Summit held in Cairo on March 4th, as well as the Organization of Islamic Cooperation on March 7th, and discussed its effective implementation in terms of security and governance. The three leaders reiterated the need to accelerate these efforts with the June conference to be chaired by France and Saudi Arabia, so to build a clear political horizon for the implementation of the two-state solution.
President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and the French President Emmanuel Macron have earlier signed the declaration on the elevation of the bilateral ties to the level of strategic partnership. The two presidents also witnessed the signing of several agreements and memoranda of understanding in the sectors of transport, health and education. This came as an Egyptian-French summit meeting took place between President al-Sisi and the visiting French President over boosting bilateral ties, as well as the unfolding regional issues, mainly the situation in Gaza and the West Bank. Addressing a press conference after the talks, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi said that he and his French counterpart Emmanuel Macron asserted the imperative need of a return to the ceasefire agreement in the Gaza Strip and the resumption of aid entry into the Strip, reiterating the rejection of any displacement of Palestinians. The President also stressed the importance of starting reconstruction in Gaza in coordination with France, notably in holding a conference on the reconstruction plan following the restoration of the ceasefire deal in Gaza. President Sisi stressed the necessity of activating the deeply rooted bilateral ties in all domains and enhancing the French investments in Egypt. The French president, meanwhile, urged the lifting of the Israeli blockade of the humanitarian aid to Gaza. Macron further reiterated that he was strongly opposed to any displacement or annexation in Gaza and the occupied West Bank. He also expressed keenness on fostering ties with Egypt in several domains over the upcoming period. Wrapping up their activities in El Ittihadiyya Presidential Palace, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and the French counterpart Emmanuel Macron made an inspection visit to Adli Mansour Interchange metro station in Cairo. The two presidents were received by Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli, Minister of Transport Kamil El-Wazir, and a number of senior state officials. Later on, the French Macron visited the Cairo University headquarters, where he attended an Egyptian-French Universities Forum. The event mirrors the deep and historical cultural ties binding Egypt and France over decades and asserts the importance of boosting joint scientific cooperation as well as enhancing connection between the cultures and peoples of both countries. As part of the two-day official visit to Egypt, French President Emmanuel Macron will head on Tuesday to the port city of El Arish in northern Sinai to highlight the humanitarian plight faced by the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. The port of El Arish, 50 kilometers west of the Gaza Strip, has been a key transit point for the international aid arriving for Gaza. Macron's office said that he is to meet the humanitarian and the security workers there to demonstrate his constant mobilization in favor of a ceasefire. Most international aid went through the Rafah crossing between Gaza and Egypt, but this has been suspended by the Israeli occupation side since early March.
In remarks before President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and French President Emmanuel Macron in the Egyptian-French Business Forum, Minister of Investment and External Trade Hassan al-Khatib said on Monday that France is an important strategic partner for Egypt, given its prominent contribution to many pivotal sectors on the investment and trade levels. More details.
President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and French President Emmanuel Macron attended on Monday activities of the Egyptian-French Business Forum. The two leaders watched a documentary entitled Egypt and France, Limitless Opportunities, showcasing the most prominent features of the strategic partnership between Cairo and Paris in fields of economy, education, energy, transport and culture, where it shed light on the joint successes. Addressing the forum, President Sisi told French businessmen that Egypt has promising investment opportunities in the infrastructure field, citing the state's notable development efforts in this pivotal field. The President pointed out to the important Egyptian-French partnership in all fields, noting that the majority of the Egyptian people are below 40, which encourages the state to open new business horizons to employ them. Macron, meanwhile, highlighted that France is a prime European investor in Egypt in non-fuel sectors to the tune of more than 7 billion euros. He stated that France contributed to the generation of more than 50,000 job opportunities in Egypt through its investments in many projects. The French leader also asserted desire to pump more investments in Egypt, a trusted partner and a stable country with a huge potential for growth.
Egypt's stock market indices slightly fluctuated in the trading session on Monday amid the selling and purchasing operations by optimistic investors on both directions. Analysts said that investors were feeling optimistic in the trading session after President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and French President Emmanuel Macron signed many partnership agreements in transportation, health and education, which will lead to better economic performance in the future. So the benchmark EGX 30 index slightly shed by 0.61% to close at 30,453.94 points. But the EGX 70 index for small and medium businesses gained 0.79%. And the broader EGX 100 index also added 0.151%. The market capitalization lost just £4 billion to close at £2 trillion and £163 billion amid transactions of about £37.9 billion.